Okay, welcome back to the studio, guys. I'm going to show you my process for building a guard tower like this for my Roman marching fort. Now this was my prototype, and you can see I used floral wire. That's what that is. I use those to make trees for my train layout, and I'm probably going to be pulling those off because I have a substitute material. Wait till the end of the video and I'll reveal what my solution is going to be. Now here is tower number 2. I'm going to build 4 total towers, and I've made a type of jig. Now here I'm going to find the middle of a rectangle by drawing 2 straight lines across the corners, and the jig is essentially 4 pieces of poster tack. Now here's where your building mat comes in critical. I use this building mat and the measurements on it in inches all the time. You can see I'm mimicking the layout. Now, hindsight, guys, you can see how I've tapered the tower on 2 of the sides. If I were to do this over again, I would keep the tower square. The taper is problematic. Where you can see at the bottom I'm at 3 inches, and at the top I taper down to 1 inch. So this is my next attempt at trying to keep a tower straight and square, which is not super critical, but as a person who is OCD, it is very frustrating. So you can see here I'm putting this bottom, it would be the platform that the guard stands on this plane right here, this line that runs straight across. Okay. And I've got 3 inches on the bottom from point to point, and it tapers to 1 inch at the top. Now I looked at a lot of photos, a lot of diagrams. There isn't a whole lot out there. How they did these forts specifically, it's a lot of speculation. There is all kinds of wild speculation that they built forts like this in 3 hours to, they took a week to build them. And you can see it's not perfectly square. The platform that the guard stands on that first guard tower is not level. So my process at this point is, hey, these were hastily put up, and they're not going to be perfect, but that is a critical element of the Roman fort to have a lookout tower. There's no record that they were ever attacked over the evenings, over the nightfall. I'm an amateur historian, amateur archaeologist. I watch a lot of documentaries ever since I was a kid. My gut feeling on this one, guys, here I'm basically just cutting pieces off the old tower to basically mimic how I did the other tower. My gut feeling on this one, guys, is they would march for a day and they would start building these forts if they were going to stay for a few days, and they would build a network of these up along the if it wasn't a road created by the Roman army, it would have been a road or game trail, much like we had in here in North America. So now you see here on the other side, I'm keeping the tower straight, and I'm thinking, well, on hindsight, I think, well, why didn't I just make the tower just a square tower, right? It'd been so much easier to keep things level and square, so that things were even. So you can see here, this is part of the problem. I'm using a fast dry super glue, Bob Smith. And by the end of this whole process, I literally had super glue all over my fingers. So it was frustrating. I think by tower number 3, I've got some other ideas of how I'm going to keep things more square and still make it so the 4 of them are similar. But back to my feelings on Roman marching forts. I don't believe that they spent this much time and this much effort building a fort that they would just basically throw away. I think it became a part of a network The only time a large force like that would go anywhere was for a significant reason, right? So I'm sure over time those forts became more established, and these were just a rough-hewn temporary fort in terms of the ramparts and the towers and things. And as time went on, they probably, made them more substantial as part of a network, right? And even small little towns, Roman towns in England would have sprung up, or even in Gaul would have sprung up off of these. So you can see I'm basically just cutting pieces right off the original tower, marking where the posts would go, the supports. The number one tip I can give you guys if you build these towers, of course, they're being built out of cocktail sticks, or they're basically for barbecue, for kebabs. They work great. The advantage to getting these on Amazon is you can buy varied quantities, you can buy varied thicknesses. These are a little thicker. I thought they would look better than some of the thin ones you can get from a grocery store. I purchased probably, like 600 of these. I figure I'm going to use probably about 400 all told. But the tip is let the glue dry completely. I would start fiddling with it and it would break the seal and things would start falling apart, and it was a bit of a struggle. Here's the cross beams. Just getting started on those. My experience with towers is from scouting. There's some lookout towers and things that were built at some of the camps that we went to that were built solely with lashing, which is how the Romans would have done this until they would come back through and the engineers would build something more permanent. You can see that top is already off square. I pretty well corrected that later. That left top platform piece needed to just be cut shorter. So at first I don't notice it, and later in the build I'm like, hey, this is not square. So I just clip it off, shorten it, and re-glue it. So I'm putting in more cross beams here. And you can see how frustrating it is. I would have laid this back down level and let the gravity hold it in place. I don't know why I didn't. Well, that's something else that I figured out here. I take a couple of those orange lids. You see it keep falling off. I'm getting glue on my fingers. I have several tweezers. I don't know why I wasn't using tweezers, but I want to show you the process here of how I screwed up and how it is a learning process. We do real life here on this channel, guys. Unedited, raw. I finally figured out I could lay even with the base on, and again I would go back. I wouldn't put the base on yet. That's tower number 3. That will be one of the things that I correct. One of the last things I do will be attaching the base. That way I can still use the gravity by laying the tower flat and letting gravity hold things into place. You see it kept falling off. Sometimes it doesn't occur to you while you're building something, and then when you go back and edit and you're like, why did I do that? It's part of the process. So in the future, when I build structures like this, bunkers and things, this will be all part of my learning process. It'll be in my memory bank. Okay, looks like it's going to hold. And see, it's shaping up. It's definitely shaping up. It's not perfect. Now here I figured out I could take a lid or two and prop the tower up to make it more level so that I could start using gravity to my advantage and holding things in place while they dried. And here I'm putting in the top rail of the guard platform. They would have draped down a knotted rope and climbed up with a rope. They would not have used, they wouldn't have taken the time to build stairs. The soldier simply, he did not need a shield or anything. This was just a lookout post. He was only up there to sound alarm if there were in fact approaching units, enemy units, simply as a lookout. And you see a lot of these things when you go to the National Forest. You'll see lookout towers for forest fires, right? They'll be extremely high, 100, 200 feet tall, some of them. It's the same concept. The Romans did not take a lot of chances when they were marching 2, 3, 1 legion from one place to the other. Now here I'm just using some poster card I cut into strips. You can see I put a middle support across the bottom floor, and it's just a heavy card stock. I have several sheets of it I'll use for making buildings, really anything I want to fabricate. And gluing these into place. Pretty simple. Look like just wood planks. And of course, I'm going to take some wood brown and brush these. This will obviously not be this color. All this stuff will get painted. Now here I'm trying to measure the one little bit that's out towards the end. You can see the top of the tower is still not square, but it's good enough. I mean, this is a temporary, fastly constructed fortress. Now, if it took them 6 to 12 hours with everyone, including the engineers, building these forts, they would have still had many groups of sentries surrounding the fort area that they were building and constructing to give them protection. So my thought is they would march 20 miles in a day. And if you've ever hiked 20 miles in the wilderness on even a trail, you know, you're not going to march that and then build a fort in 3 hours. It's just not going to happen. Okay, so there had to be some other type of system. They did a partial day's march, and they set up sentries while they built a fort so they could stay for maybe 3 to 7 days. Then they would march another 20-mile stretch and build another temporary fort. So that way they were creating a network of fortresses for their protection. And as I said, they would have expanded those over the years to make them more permanent. And that's how some of those, probably a lot of those small towns in Gaul and France, southwestern Germany, throughout England started. Those towns started as Roman forts. That's something interesting to think about. This is part of the fun of the hobby, guys. This is just winging it. I've totally just making this up as I go along. Studied a few pictures on Google. Got some ideas of what to do. Watched a lot of videos. If you're on my Facebook group, I've shared some of the videos I've drawn from to get information about building these forts and building my units. Last little piece in place. Obviously I'll paint that a medium brown, and I'll do some sort of a timber brown for the supports. And you see the original tower, the first tower I built, I used the floral wire. And I got to thinking, I didn't like how that was turning out. And the other issue is I don't want to install the lashings on the posts until after I apply the color. It was one of my mistakes with tower number 1. So what I've done to solve that problem is I went to the Hobby Lobby. See, they still look similar. It's passable, it's workable. But I'm going to take those lashings off. I'm going to pull that wire off because I need to paint the timbers first, and then I'm going to do a darker color in this. But this is just a simple cross stitch thread and perfect color. See you on the next video, guys. Ciao.